I'm going to start the recording. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today. Today, I have a very special guest. We have Ruth Lauener, who is an International Recruitment Manager for the Americas. She works at the University of Sheffield. And today, we're going to talk about PhD studies and how you can go to Sheffield and how is the process about studying at the University of Sheffield. So Ruth, if you want, you can start now.
Brilliant. Thank you, Laura. So hello, everybody. As Laura said, my name's Ruth, and it's my job to help students from Mexico and students across the Americas who are thinking about coming to study in the UK at all study levels. We're really happy that you're thinking about studying a PhD. We know that it's a big decision, and we think it's a fantastic decision. At Sheffield, we're a research-intensive university, so we're a member of the Russell Group, which means that research is really, really important to everything we do. And our PhD students are such an important part of that research reputation that we have. So, you know, we're really pleased that you're thinking about becoming a PhD student at Sheffield, and we want to make sure that you have all of the information that you need to help with the process, because we know it can be a bit daunting, a bit more of a complicated process than it is to apply for a master's or a bachelor's degree. So we want to help make sure that you understand what tools you might have available to help with that and the various different options in terms of studying a PhD. So today we're going to talk about how you might find a PhD, because it's a little, like I've said, it's a little more complicated than, you know, looking at a list and finding a master's program that you're interested in. We'll talk a little bit about the proposal, which is a big part of the application process for a lot of PhDs. And we'll also talk about some of the support that's available for international PhD applicants. So we'll start with how to find a PhD, but also talking a little bit about what a PhD looks like in the UK, because it's worth pointing that out as well, because it can often be quite different to other countries. And the typical duration of a PhD in the UK is 3 to 4 years. And I know that seems probably quite a lot shorter than what you might be used to for Mexico or for other countries, but in the UK, it is typically 3 to 4 years that you would be studying for your PhD. Now, a PhD is very, very different to studying a master's or an undergraduate, because it is largely self-directed. Really, a PhD is about you, your supervisor, and your research. You're not doing, you know, a set structure of modules like you would for a master's. You are deciding what your PhD contains and which direction it goes in. And that's what's really, really exciting about them. You will work very, very closely with a supervisor. So that relationship between you and the supervisor is really, really important. And your supervisor, they're essentially an academic expert in your field who can supervise and guide you. But really, the research is down to you. The supervisor will offer advice and guidance, and they'll work with you to get the best out of you. They also might help you identify any training needs that you might have. So if you've planned your research and planned your PhD, and you've both established that actually your knowledge in a certain area is a bit lacking, they can help you get that knowledge that you need to keep your PhD on track. So yeah, a really important relationship between the student and the supervisor in a PhD. So we'll go back to that original question, how to find a PhD. Now, there's various different ways to find a PhD, and we'll talk through some of them in a minute, because, you know, when you were looking for your master's program or your bachelor's program, you probably just found the universities that were good at what you did, saw what programs they offered, looked at the course content, and then found the one that was most relevant for you. With PhDs, it is very different, because each PhD is individual and unique. So the first way to find a PhD is to apply for an existing project that a university might be offering. Now, I'm going to use this as a bit of an interactive workshop to go through some of the tools and websites that you might use when you're finding a PhD. So hopefully that'll be helpful, so that when you come to do the searching by yourself, you'll have you be a bit more familiar with some of the tools. So yeah, so this first way is apply for an existing project. And this way, it's a bit like applying for a job. So in these instances, a university or a department will have a specific project in mind that they want to find somebody to fill. So essentially, then it's like they're looking for a candidate to fill a job vacancy. They know what the project is. They know what the scope of the research is. They just need to find across the world the perfect candidate to do that research. Now, in order to find these opportunities, these existing projects, they are often listed on department websites, but a really good place to start is a website called findaphd.com. Now, I'm going to open this up so we can have a little look at it. And findaphd.com, it covers all universities, well, not every single university in the world, but it covers a lot of universities all around the world. So it can be a really good starting point because, you know, you don't always know that every university is going to offer the research area that you're interested in. So this will help narrow it down, but you can also use it to search by university. So if we can have some comments in the chat box from students about what type of PhD they're looking for, please do let me know, and then we can do a live search for something that you are particularly interested in. So so Laura, if you can let me know if anyone's typing what they're interested in a PhD in, I can find it and see what we have. So you can select by university. So I'm selecting University of Sheffield. And you can also select by department. So would anybody like to suggest a particular department that they are interested in studying a PhD in, and then I can see what we've got available?
So Ruth, someone sent me privately that they would like to see the ones that are available at the Department of Immunity.
Okay, so like infection and immunity.
Yeah, that one.
Okay, so that would probably be in our, well, it could be in a few different departments, but if we look at infection, immunity, and cardiovascular disease, that will be the one. So this is showing 9 results. So it's showing 9 existing projects that we are looking for a candidate in. And if you see here, it'll give brief information about the project that's available. It'll talk about the supervisors, and you can click through to find out more information about those supervisors. And it will mention as well whether or not the project is funded. And actually, you can see here, there may be funding available for this project, but you'll find that in most cases, these projects tend to be for self-funded PhD students or students who can bring funding from an external source, so somewhere like conocer or something like that. But yeah, so that's an example of where we can see a few different, you know, vacancies essentially that we have for PhD students in a particular area. So, you know, you've got this website, findaphd.com. Obviously, you can go and have a play in your own time, and you can search by department, or you can search by university or discipline or keyword or anything like that. But it's a really, really good tool to go through. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the presentation now. So that's the first way of applying for a PhD. Apply for an existing project that already exists. The second way is to apply to a doctoral training centre for a funded project. And again, this is similar to the first way in terms of it's kind of like applying for a job, because you're applying for an existing opportunity where we're essentially looking for vacancies. You know, we're advertising vacancies. And a doctoral training centre is a slightly different version of a normal PhD. So there's a few differences. So these doctoral training centres, they're often where a university is working in collaboration, either with industry, an industrial partner, or with other different universities. So you can see here on the right, there's an example of one of our doctoral training centres, that's run in collaboration with the universities of Leeds, Sheffield and York. So that's one difference, that these doctoral training centres that often run in collaboration with industry or with other universities. Another difference is that they're often more structured than a normal PhD. So they tend to be 4 years rather than the more typical 3 years. And they tend to be cohort based. So you might have a group of students, a group of PhD students studying similar PhDs in a doctoral training centre. And sometimes they even include an integrated master's as part of the 4-year programme. Another difference with doctoral training centres is that they often tend to bring funding. So, that funding might be from industry, or it might be from a research council or something like that. But yes, that is one of the differences as well. So doctoral training centres, the best place to look for these is often, well, if you're wanting to look for Sheffield doctoral training centres, we have them all listed on our website. And I'll link through now so you can see the list of doctoral training centres that we would have available at Sheffield. Okay, so this is our website. And Laura, if you wouldn't mind sharing this link in the chat, if you can find it, that would be great, of course, so people have access to it. So essentially, yeah, so you can see here the list of doctoral training centres that we have, and you can filter by area. So, there's lots in energy, environment, sustainability, and you can click through and you can read about each of these doctoral training centres and, see if they match your area of interest. So, there's too much information to go through now, but hopefully this shows you where the information is that you would need to look for. And, then you go through, you can, so let's have a look at this one, for example. So it will tell you when you go through to these pages for the doctoral training centres, it will tell you when the application processes are, when they're open, when they're closed. It will talk a little bit about the aims of the centre and have lots of information about what they're researching and who they're looking for. So yeah, it's a very useful web page there. And we had a few people interested in medicine, so I'll just open that one up as well. Okay, so that is the second way to apply for a PhD. So applying to a doctoral training centre for a funded project. So the third way, and actually this is the way that I see, because obviously those first two ways, they're very, very competitive because you get lots of people applying for the same opportunities. Now, this third way is probably the way that I see most students applying for PhDs at the University of Sheffield. And this is where you find a supervisor or a department and suggest your own project. So, if you've got a really clear idea of what you want to research and how you're going to research it, then this could be the way for you. And, again, for these where you're suggesting your own project, you typically would need to either provide your own funding or be able to apply to a sponsor, Conoceed or Educafin or someone like that, to fund your project, because they don't typically come with funding attached, or apply for university funding, which I'll talk about a little bit later on. So this way, it's really about finding that person. If you've got this clear idea of what you want to study, you need to scour the universities, and you'll probably have to look at multiple universities to find a short list of supervisors who are qualified, but also interested in supervising your project. And on the Sheffield website, we have a very useful tool that can help you do this. So I'll click through and show you our search for a supervisor tool. So if somebody would like to, from the audience, if you'd like to give me a keyword or a key department that you're interested in, then we can do a live search using your example to make it a bit more interactive. So Laura, I'll ask you to read it out for me when it comes in, please.
Great. So they are asking about blockchain.
About what, sorry?
Blockchain.
Blockchain?
Yeah.
As in B-L-O-C-K?
Yeah, exactly.
Blockchain. I don't know what that is. I've never heard of it. So, okay. Something in chemistry, I assume. So, this tool allows you to search by keyword, and you can put in whatever it is that you're looking for, and it will bring up the profiles of academics who are working in that area or who have that area mentioned. Okay, no, there's some management school here. You'll have to let me know if what I put in there is not correct, blockchain, because I've not come across that term before.
It's only one word, so you just have to delete the space between block and chain.
Blockchain. Aha, okay, there we go. We've got it. Computer science. You can tell I'm not a scientist. So, okay, so blockchain, we have found a supervisor in the Department of Computer Science who is interested in blockchain-based applications. So I hope that is the right type of blockchain. So then what you would do is you would click through to this person's webpage, and hopefully this will work. Okay, fantastic. So you go through to the supervisor's webpage. You can read about them, a profile of the academic. You can read about what they're interested in researching. And it's with this type of information that you can understand if this tutor or if this person is going to be the right type of, the right type of match for you. So that's how we would use the research supervisor tool. You can also search by department. So if you wanted to look at everybody in computer science, for example, you can search, and it brings up short profiles of all of our professors. And then you could maybe use Control and F to search for a word that way, and it will take you. So, there's various different ways you can play about with this tool, but it's a really good way to point you in the right direction and to identify some of the supervisors that you might be interested in working with. The other way to do it is to look at department web pages. So say if you know that you're interested, you know that you're a mechanical engineer and you're looking for a PhD in mechanical engineering. So if you go to the research pages on that specific department, it will have information about the various, groups that we have, the various research groups that we have. You think, oh, I'm interested in thermofluids. So you click through, and this way you can find, information about the group, but also link to our experts. And these are, again, the professors who are in this area. Again, you can click through, you can see the details of the professor and what they're interested in researching. And you always have the contact details of the professor. And so, this is where, in these types of instances, we would encourage you to make contact with the professor. If you find someone that you think's a match, make contact with them and see if they are interested in your project, see if they're interested in working with you. Sometimes it's not just about being interested. They also need to have the capacity and the availability in their labs or in their schedules. So, this is why PhDs aren't, pick it off a shelf and choose it. It's conversations, it's finding out more information, it's discussions to try and find that right match. Okay, so that's the third way. And these are, like I say, this is what I see most often. Now, in terms of the proposal, this is something that forms a really important point of this third method of finding a PhD. For the first two, you'll find that often the scope of the research will be written because the professor knows who they want to recruit. They know what they're looking for. So actually, in those instances, you don't often have to write a proposal. But where you are suggesting your own idea, that is where you need to write a proposal. And it's probably the most important part of your PhD application. And this is because it persuades supervisors, also admissions panels, but also funders and people like that, of why your work is important and why you are the right person to undertake it. So it's really important that, you know, if you are going for that third option, then you really start to think about your proposal. You know, having a good idea of what you want to research before you approach an academic is really, really helpful. So department web pages will give any specific requirements for the proposal, but normally it should be around 500 to 1,000 words, and it should cover the following areas. So first of all, what is your idea? So what is your research question? So this can be, you know, a bit of a hypothesis, and really, I guess it's the sort of title of your PhD. And, you know, in a short title, what are you investigating? The second thing you should cover is what's your aim? So what are you hoping to achieve with your research, and why is it worth doing? Why is it important that you research this? You know, you need to persuade us why this is an important research project. But also, what makes your idea relevant? So how does it fit into the current landscape of research in this area? Is your research completely new? These are all things that we want to know. Very importantly as well, what's your plan? So logistics. How will you carry out your research? What's your methodology? And what's the timetable? Because the supervisors need to know that your project is achievable in the timescales given. And also, what resources do you need? So what materials, what equipment do you need? Is there any travel involved? Is there any particular training that you would need? And with this information, the supervisor reads that and they can say, okay, I am qualified and interested in supervising this student. Or they can say, actually, this is not quite relevant to my area of expertise. And they might either suggest someone else, or they might just say, unfortunately, this isn't one for me. So it's trial and error. You might find that you contact a few supervisors before you find the right one. But, you know, it's a process that all PhD students go through. So I'm going to hand over to Laura now, who's going to talk a little bit about the sort of nuts and bolts, or the logistics of the application process. Just to sort of recap, so for the first and second methods for finding a PhD that I mentioned earlier, they will usually have you know, information about the specific application process, the deadlines, things like that, what documents they would look for. They'll usually have that information listed as part of the vacancy that they're advertising. For the third one, that's a bit more flexible in terms of you can approach a supervisor at any time in the year and start that process at any time throughout the year. But I'll hand over to Laura now, who's going to talk a little bit about sort of entry requirements and documents.
Thank you very much, Ruth. So yeah, as Ruth was mentioning, we're going to go through some of the documents and that you must submit in order to be accepted. So in general terms, for entering a PhD, we would typically look for a minimum of 8 from 10 in the Mexican system scale from your master's degree and also from your bachelor's degree. And you would also need an English certificate. So you can present the IELTS academic, and for this test, we would need an overall score of 6.5 or above, and at least 6.0 in each component. You can also, if you want, submit the TOEFL IBT, and the minimum score would be an 88. But for some programs or projects, this requirement is higher sometimes, so we would need to check that, but don't worry about it now. And in terms of the documents you would need, we would need the transcripts and the degree certificates, so the título and the cardex, that's how we name it. And these two documents, well, these 4 documents, the ones from your bachelor's and your master's, would be also translated by a perito traductor, so it is an official translation that you must submit to. We would also need a personal statement. So it is basically a statement where you write, why do you want to study at Sheffield? Why do you want to study this specific PhD? And yeah, list the reasons why you want to do it. We would also need 2 references. These references can be academic or professional ones. So basically, the people that recommend you need to list why they think you are a good candidate for the university and the program specifically. As I mentioned before, you would also need an English certificate. So most of these certificates, the IELTS and the TOEFL, would need to be less than 2 years old by the moment you start your PhD. As Ruth was mentioning, not for every PhD we would require a research proposal, but in case you need it, you need to submit that with us. And you can find more information in each department about the length and the content of the proposal in general terms. So normally it is like 8 or 9 pages long. We would also need your scanned passport. That is also something really important. Your CV updated and in English, of course. And you would need to complete the application form in this link, because there is where we're going to have all the information. And as Ruth was mentioning, we're going to guide you throughout the whole process. So yeah, this would be the main documents you would need to apply.
Thank you, Laura. So before we go on to questions, I just wanted to share a little bit of information that I think is particularly useful for international students. Now, one of the really exciting new developments is the graduate visa route, which is new for this summer, 2021. And the graduate route will allow students to remain in the UK for 3 years after completing a PhD. And that gives you the opportunity to find some work in the UK if you want to, build up your CV a little bit after you've been studying. That is now an option. So we're really, really pleased about that. We do provide a lot of support every step of the way for international students. So we have support from people like myself before you arrive, but also Laura is our dedicated Sheffield representative based out in Mexico within Inova Education. She can provide a lot of support through every step of the way also. But as well as that sort of assistance type support, we also want to make you aware of some of the financial support that we have available. So I referred earlier to university funding. So the university does have an annual convocatoria for PhDs. Now, the deadline is usually January for the following academic year. So applications are usually open between about November to January for students starting the following September, onwards. So it's good to be aware of that and to check each winter what type of funding we have available that's open. And like I say, it is usually pretty competitive, but you should definitely apply. Some projects do include funding, although that can be fairly rare, but it's worth just double checking because some projects will include funding. And also it's worth just saying that we do have an agreement with Conocer, and I know that this year they've reduced their priority areas to healthcare only. We're waiting to see what will happen for next year. There are also other funding bodies like Educafin, if you're based in Guanajuato, for example, that offer a couple of years of PhD funding. So it's worth doing, a bit of research into local funding providers as well and seeing if you can find something local to your state or somebody else that we have an agreement with. And I've put a link there which will show you our funding information. There's probably not too much information on there at this time of year because it's usually between November to January that most of the information is on there, but that link is there for your reference so you can be familiar with the page. And if you want to find out what it's like to study a PhD, because it is very different to studying a master's or a bachelor's, then we do have the opportunity for you to speak to current students, including current PhD students. So if you would like to do that, you can go to this link, and if you search PhD, you will find current PhD students and you can speak to them about their experiences of studying a PhD. And Laura is just going to tell you a little bit about herself and Inova, and then we'll go for questions.
Yes, thank you, Ruth. So as Ruth was mentioning, I'm a representative for the University of Sheffield, based in Mexico City, and I help students, Mexican students, but also all the other Latin American students. We are really, our mission is help you and guide you throughout the process. Whenever you say like, hey, this topic is of my interest and I want you to help me find PhD options, we go through the application process with you, help you with your documents. We offer visa support. So we really help you throughout the whole process. We do it for free. So I'm really happy to help you and guide you throughout the process. So please, if you're interested, feel free to email me or email Ruth or email both of us, and we're gonna be really happy to guide you.
Brilliant. So thank you so much for listening. I hope you found it helpful, and we'd be really happy to take any questions and answers that you have. Our questions, our details are on the screen now. So if you wanted to take a screenshot or a picture of this screen, then please feel free. But I will now stop sharing my screen and we can take any questions from the audience. We'll be more than happy to help.
So if you want, you can open your microphone and just say the question, or you can type it in the chat box. We can do both.
Yes, hello, Laura and Ruth. Thank you very much for the presentation. My name is Lina from Peru. And I do have a question because I didn't know about this scheme of the White Rose doctoral training. I'm looking for a PhD on politics or development within social sciences. And I was wondering if I do apply for the White Rose Social Sciences doctoral training, should I apply only for the doctoral training at this website and later to the PhD in the proper department, let's say politics department or social science department? Then I read on the website, on the White Rose, that a supervisor should not nominate me. So I just wanted to know how, in depth, how should I get to that point? I understand I may contact a potential supervisor, which I already done in other universities, but usually they don't like say, okay, I will nominate you for any doctoral training schemes. So if you could please perhaps talk more about it, I would be thankful.
So Lina, because this is quite a specific inquiry about your specific PhD and your specific doctoral training centre, I think it's going to be better if we schedule in some time outside of this session and we can go through this with you in a bit more detail about your specific situation, if that's okay. So what I'll do is I'll put my Calendly link in the chat, and then Laura, if Lina books an appointment with me, I'll invite you as well. So I'll just find my Calendly link, and that way we can go through in a bit more detail outside of this session, if that's okay. There it is. Perfect. So does anybody else have any
yes,
questions?
Thank you very much, of course.
Are there any general questions or anything else that people wanted to ask about?
I have another question for us, Ruth. So this student is from Ecuador, and she's asking about funding opportunities for Ecuadorian students.
So we have previously received students from Ecuador through Cenecit. I know that they've not been offering scholarships recently, but it's certainly one to keep an eye out and see if they do offer any more convocatorias. Otherwise, I'm not aware of any other funding bodies in Ecuador, but that doesn't mean there aren't any. It just means that, you know, might need to do a bit of searching to see if there are any other options. But that's where keeping an eye out for our convocatoria is an option as well, to see if we might have any funding available to support you.
Great, thank you, Ruth. They are also asking about the time when these PhD studies start, because we know that for the masters, it is really clear that it is by the end of September, but can you tell us a little bit more about the time when the PhDs start?
Sure. So usually most of our PhD students will either start in October or in February. So we try to keep to those two start dates for most students, because, you know, it makes it a bit easier if we've got a group of students starting at the same time rather than students starting all throughout the year, because, you know, it allows us to put on more welcome events for sort of students starting in those same times. But if for any reason a student cannot start in those start dates, if, for example, their funder stipulates that they need to start in March or June, then you know, we can be flexible with that, but usually it would be October or February.
Great. Now, in terms of accommodation for PhD students, they are asking about the accommodation from the university. So can you tell us more about it?
Yeah, sure. So we have some accommodation options available either on campus or about 20 minutes walk away in the leafy green suburbs of the city. So we do have postgraduate blocks of accommodation, so you won't be with all the partying undergraduate students. So that is an option that many students go for, but there's also many options in the private sector in Sheffield as well. So, you know, some students start off in university accommodation, then move to the private sector. Other students go in the private sector the whole time. Some students stay in university accommodation for the 3 years as well. So we have plenty of accommodation in Sheffield. We're very lucky in that respect.
Great. And related to the new graduate route, about this new rule that the immigration authority mentioned, can you tell us a little bit more about that?
So there's not really loads more to say, other than that, you know, they've introduced this new rule that students who are starting, students who will be in the UK from June 2021, so actually students who are graduating this September will be able to benefit from it. But basically, they can get a visa to stay in the UK to work at any skill level. So previously, students could only stay in the UK if they were able to get a certain job that paid a certain amount of money that met the requirements to get the certain sort of, you know, special visa to stay in the UK. So it was linked to, you know, you had to get a job within a certain amount of time to get this visa. Whereas now, students can apply for the visa without a job offer. So it takes that pressure off a bit and allows students a bit more time. You know, they can get a casual part-time job whilst they're looking for a job and still get that visa to stay in the UK. And for PhD students, that sort of extra visa length is 3 years.
Great. Now, one student is asking us about the living cost. If you can mention how much money monthly is necessary.
Yeah, so the UK government recommends 1,023. It's a very specific amount. I don't know why it's so specific, but that is the amount that the UK government recommends for living costs outside of London. Now, you'll probably find that in Sheffield, your living costs will be a bit less than this, but that is what you would need to show to get your visa, essentially.
Thank you very much. I don't see any more questions, so you have Ruth's contact details, my contact details, and we would be really happy to help you and guide you throughout the process. So if there are no more questions, we can end this session, and hopefully we can guide you through the process. So thank you very much, Ruth, for joining us today.
And thank you, Laura, for organising the session. Thank you for logging in, everybody. I hope you found it useful. And please do feel free to get in touch if you have any further questions.
Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.